Hello, we are coming to you today with a practitioner tip. And what we're going to talk through is around how to identify when you are in fix it mode. We're going to kind of talk about what that means, but I think we all kind of know, and how to pull yourself out. So, we have three things that we think about as practitioners that really help us to identify, because sometimes we don't actually know we're in fix it mode until we're deep in it. So what is, Megan, for you, what is fix it mode look like?
So for me, fix it mode, and I just want to say, even as someone that's been in practice for, almost 13 or 14 years at this point, I still find myself going into fix it mode. I think it's a very natural mode that as a practitioner, and it's well intentioned, but it doesn't always serve the person or the client you're working with. It's for me, when I find myself going into fix it mode, I find myself wanting to fix the problem so I can feel good about myself as a practitioner, as opposed to really, and like feel good about like, oh, I've got the answer, as opposed to really taking the time to ask the questions and go deeper with the client and even help them come to their solution that's within them, as opposed to me having the answer. So to me, fix it mode will happen. Number one, it'll happen when I'm fatigued, in all honesty. Like I will notice that when I'm fatigued, if I have too many clients on my plate, if I am just struggling and I'm not doing a good job taking care of myself and practicing the medicine that I need, I can find myself going into fix it mode, because it's actually easier at times to go into that mode than not, just because of the way I was taught as a, it's just, and just kind of it's just the way that for me, it will wind up being a little bit easier to go into that mode. So when I'm fatigued, I'll notice that I'm going into it, and it'll show up as, it'll show up as an energy that's very sped up, right? Where it's like, oh, you are, you're clearly, okay, so you're struggling with rheumatoid arthritis. What's the root cause? And, and the root cause is always the like thing that people want to go to. And it's not that it's not important, but it's like the root cause could be like, have you looked for mold? Have you looked for Lyme? Have you looked for food intolerances? Is there leaky gut? Is there the and it's like, that's going into fix it mode, as opposed to stepping back and saying, okay, what's the environment in which this present person's presentation of this disease and disease has presented, and looking more closely at the individual in their environment, as opposed to just going straight into fix it mode. What about for you? That's how it usually shows up for me.
Yeah, I mean, same thing for me. I think for me, it sometimes shows up if I am experiencing any like self-doubt, or I don't feel quite in my power with things, because I think being in fix it mode ends up being, like you said at the beginning, more about us and doing something for us than it is about the client. And it's hard because most of us get into this profession because we want to fix, we want to help, we want to heal. And many of us may be fixers in our families. We may have this inclination that if we see something that's not right or see someone that's suffering, we want to alleviate that suffering. But going into, like you said, the fix it mode when we are specifically working with clients can sometimes get us into a place where we get more overly sped up, and also that we aren't actually meeting the client exactly where they're needing and giving them what they need. So I always have to check myself if I'm feeling like someone's coming to me and I'm doubting myself, like, oh, I charged them this much and they they're in this bad place and I told them I could help them, and okay, let me get in there, let me just make sure we're doing everything, let me make sure I've thought of everything, or I tell her how much I know about this so she knows that I'm smart and like I'm aware of everything. And I'm, when I notice that I'm doing things like that, or even, when I notice that I'm feeling really tired after client sessions, or or that I'm thinking a lot about client sessions when I'm waking up in the morning or in the evening, I know that I'm kind of in a fix it mode, and like I've drifted out of my own, I'll say, power. I don't know if that's this, but I've drifted a little bit away from myself. And I'm trying to like prove something a little bit, and it's not helping anyone. So yeah, that's kind of what we mean by fix it mode. And fix it mode can cause us to be sped up. It can cause us to feel burnt out. And it can cause us to kind of like go over our client, like not meet them exactly where they're at too. So that's why we want to be able to identify it and then figure out how to pull ourselves out. So the first way that we pull ourselves out is just by taking a pause and noticing how you're feeling before and after client sessions. What we really want to be able to do is ground into a neutral place so that we can stay there regardless of what's coming up for the client. So even if it's really something very, very heavy that people are going through, or they're dealing with, really, really, they're really, really sick, depending on what client population you work with. We can find ourselves getting pulled in. Like the other thing I like to say is it's that I think about is like, it's not, if someone's drowning, it's not jumping in the pool with them to try and save them. It's actually staying outside of the pool, having steady ground and feet, and reaching your hand in to pull them out, to actually get them out, as opposed to both of you flailing in the water. So that's how I kind of feel it. But yeah, for that first one, Megan, of like noticing how you're feeling before and after, how does that play out for you?
Definitely noticing, paying attention, and staying grounded and staying in my body. So I will even, like, say I come into a session and the person whom I'm working with is like, I did all the things and nothing worked. Nothing has helped. That's a really like common place where fix it mode can show up, right? So instead of jumping in or jumping onto their wagon, I will actually like practice, like, even just like patting my legs, or holding, like going back and forth and squeezing my hands so that I stay here instead of jumping on with them, because there is that temptation of like, oh, let me fix that. But that's actually not going to help, and that's not going to serve. What's going to serve is getting curious and slowing it down and taking a closer look. My longtime teacher and mentor, Andrea Nakayama, she did a really good job over my many years of being with her of instilling in me, are you in the place of serving, or are you in the place of pleasing? And really looking at serving versus pleasing, and what is serving versus pleasing. And to me, being in fix it mode is more in the pleasing mode. So checking myself, okay, how am I going to serve this person? What do I need to do to be able for myself to be able to be most in alignment with serving this person? And then the biggest thing for me, and we didn't talk about this before we recorded this, Christina, but the biggest thing for me is checking in on whether or not I'm working harder than the client.
Yes.
That's the biggest one. And like we were talking about, am I thinking about this person outside of their sessions too much, or am I waking up thinking about them? If, as practitioners, it is not our job to work harder than our clients. And we have to check in with ourselves around, am I working harder than my client? Am I working harder than the person? And if the answer is yes, then the exploration isn't around what else do I bring in for my client. It's more, okay, how do I slow myself down, get in alignment so that I can get curious about what will help my client be able to move forward and gain more momentum, or how do I just accept that this is the pace that this person needs to go at, and that's okay.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's such a good question. Am I working harder than them? That comes from a in theory, good place. But when we start to work harder than our clients, we're actually taking from them. their ability to develop those muscles of figuring things out, of dealing with nothing else worked, right? Like nothing worked. Like that's an area to explore and we can't skip over that. And that's one of our, when we're going to talk about is asking good questions. But that actually, maybe we can talk into that now and then talking through the other thing. But yeah, like being able to ask good questions. So when someone comes to you and says, absolutely nothing worked, or they're dealing with something that's really, really hard, as opposed to, oh my God, I have to fix this. I have to like work hard. It's like, okay, and how does that feel for you to feel like nothing works? That must be really frustrating. That's what I would do with someone with it. That must feel really frustrating. Have you had that experience before? Yeah, I have. And going into the places that when we're in fix it mode, we actually skip over, and asking those really good questions. And I think that's something that you're really, really good at, Megan, that I've learned from you, is like, because when I'm in fix it mode, I want to skip over and be like, oh my gosh, well, let me show you all the things that will work. And like here, but it's actually saying, okay, like that must feel really frustrating. And, I've had moments with clients in that where they'll start sobbing, crying. Yes, it is really frustrating. And I hate being in this place and you realize it has nothing to do with you as a practitioner. It's really just allowing space for that person to have that experience, and then to be able to guide them from that place.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you summed it up beautifully.
Yeah. So asking questions is kind of like our second piece. And then the third piece we touched on a little bit, but having like practices to separate yourself from a client. I think we could probably do a whole different video on this. I have a lot of practices I use that, separate me from it. Like for you, Megan, you're talking about feeling into your body and squeezing. I physically will pull myself back from the screen and check in on my posture and, what I'm doing. I will, if someone's starting to talk about something that's really, really tough and I can feel my heart or like, you know, tentacles going out into that, going into fix it mode, I consciously like pull them back. And sometimes I'll imagine a basket in front of me in between us two where their words are going into that and they're not touching me, but I can be there with that person. So there's many, many different things that we help guide practitioners and people through in terms of how we can support our own energy and our own boundaries. But for now, we'll just say check in on those pieces. And if you want more support in those areas, just reach out to us and let us know, because those have been amazingly transformative for me as a sensitive person.
Yeah, no, and I mean, that I love that in talking about the basket, like in essence, that's the container, right? That's the container that we are creating for people. And in order to do our best work in the world and in order to serve people in the ways that we want to serve them, we have to have the practices that enable us to really stay grounded and stay in our bodies. And discovering those practices is almost more important than knowing how to treat the SIBO, knowing how to treat the RA, knowing, you know what I mean? Knowing the right dietary, the right food. Like, it is such an energetic and powerful connection that we can make when we are in alignment with how we care for ourselves as practitioners.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you need a resource, we have our 25 coaching questions for transformational sessions. You can download below for free. So that will help guide you with some questions in these places. And we have our gifts workshop coming up, depending on when you're listening to this, but we will put a link below where we really focus on how we connect to our own innate gifts as practitioners in order to up-level our coaching practice, but just have a better relationship with our clients. And it helps when I'm talking about feeling like out of my power. What we're really focusing on are understanding our gifts, understanding our essence, understanding our power, but more importantly, identifying when we're out of it and finding these, having these really clear methods and ways to bring ourselves back into it, so that if we are getting stuck in fix it mode, we're feeling exhausted after client sessions, we're consistently working harder than our clients, we're feeling self-doubt, all of these things, we know that there's something there that we're not quite connected to our gifts, to our essence, as a practitioner. And in this workshop, we help guide you back to how to find that again. Yep. So you can sign up at the link. We'll put a link below, and we hope that this is helpful.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.